Eleanor Liam presents, in cooperation with Pride of the Fleet, the Sudrian Chronicles, Book 1, The Railway Engines. Dear friends, Edward is a little old engine. Next, of course, came numerous stories. Many stories. This little book became a franchise. Through its ups and downs, it sprouted a fandom. A rather unlikely fandom. And through that fandom became the series that I've made. My version of what I imagine this franchise to be in another lifetime. These are the stories I've created with help from many of my friends. I hope you enjoy. Sincerely, the author. Once upon a time, long ago, there was a little engine named Edward. He lived in the town of Vigorstown in a shed named after it. Several other engines lived in the shed with him. A few of them were bigger than him, and they enjoyed teasing him for such.
"The director won't choose you again,"
boasted one engine, a large blue one named Gordon. He had recently been purchased after one of the other engines had stopped in a tunnel and refused to come out.
"He wants big, strong engines like us,"
finished another. This one looked similar to Gordon, but just a bit smaller. His name was Fulcrum. Edward had not been out in a long time. More engines came to the railway. New ones. Bigger ones. Stronger ones. Edward thought he would never come out again. The clouds outside the open shed door shook with thunder as footsteps shuffled outside the shed. The director of the railway walked up. He was a stout young man, or at least younger than Edward, which wasn't saying as much. He slid his hand into his back pocket and pulled out a notepad. He scattered through the pages till he landed on the one he needed. He strode his finger down the page till he landed on the first bullet.
"Gordon," said the director, "the express as usual."
A broad smile gleamed on his face.
"You see, little Edward, just wait for me to come by with the express. Won't that be a fine sight for it?"
But he was cut off by the director. A frown came upon his face as he looked through the sheds.
"Has anyone seen Beryl?"
The shed had a few empty berths, yes, but Beryl, specifically, was empty.
"Where has that engine gone off to now?"
commented the director as he began to flip through his notepad once again. Fulcrum began to laugh.
"Still not pulling the flying kipple, I presume,"
he chortled.
"Such a despicable engine, pulling trucks than coaches. What a poor example." "Quite right,"
came Gordon. A groan from the other engines followed. "Can you even let an engine get its rest?" Another voice came. A small little blue tank engine battered their eyes open. With a long yawn, they began to rant. Edward, of course, ignored this and turned toward a yellow engine. She was somewhat his size in comparison, but spotted a lovely yellow livery. "Good morning, Molly. How are you?" "I'm doing," she yawned, "decent, but this bickering is, well, I can't say I didn't expect it on such a morning like this." She looked up to the sky. Edward followed suit. The clouds had begun to rumble in the far distance. A glimmer of sunlight shone through the countryside far away where the herds of animals grazed. "Quite agreed," chuckled Edward. "Oh, I wish I could get out one ride before the storm hits us." A sudden laugh bellowed from Gordon.
"Oh, ho, 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 ho!"
"Is Santa here already?" came the cheeky blue engine.
"Shut it, Thomas,"
retorted Gordon.
"Oh, Edward, I hate to break it to you, old friend."
"We only met a week ago."
"But your passenger train days are over."
"Yes, Fulcrum," said Thomas, "and he only chooses engines who don't do goods work. Tommy, when is the last time you were able to pull a passenger train?"
"I pull coaches too, unlike little urchins who shunt in station sidings."
"Well, last time this little urchin had to shunt a passenger train for Your Highness was about October of last year."
"That's enough, all of you."
The director's head popped out of his note journal and resumed focus on the now lively shed.
"Since Beryl seems to have been delayed somewhere from his way back from Manchester, presumably, I'll need an engine to take his place and pull the first passenger train." "Me, sir,"
Fulcrum called, who obviously wanted to prove something to Thomas. Thomas sprung back. "Ooh, please use me, sir. I've been shunting my best recently, I promise." But the director didn't go to Fulcrum or Thomas. Instead, he walked toward the lonely Edward.
"How are you, Edward?"
he asked warmly. He placed a hand on his footplate.
"I've seemed to have neglected you. Would you like to pull Beryl's first train?" "No, sir," cried Fulcrum. "I'm better than that old tea kettle."
But the director didn't listen. "Oh, sir, I bid honor. Pray, sir."
That's a good engine. Now off you go. And Thomas, why aren't you at the station already?
Fulcrum laughed under his breath.
You would fetch Edward his coaches.
Oh, no, sir. It's fine. I can get them on my own.
Are you sure, Edward?
I am. And with that, Edward set off. Well, then, guess I can get a few more...
Thomas! boomed Gordon. My coaches! And with a moan and a groan, Thomas set off.
Edward entered the station yards. It sat to the left of the massive station, and had a section of the station's canopy covering the back of it for the coaches. It wasn't big, but it was well enough for the station. He made his way to the array of coaches. "Edward!" cried the first coach. "Edward's here!" cried another. "It's been so long!" A chorus of cheers sprang from the sidings, all welcoming him. He slowly and very gently shunted up to the coaches, and the shunter fastened the coupling.
Oh, thank you, Edward, thank you,
choired the coaches. Edward laughed as he carefully pulled the coaches out of the siding, then the yard. Edward had made good time to the station. He waited at Kronk for the passengers and guard to arrive. 10 o'clock hit. The passengers entered the small station platform, scrambled into the coaches, and waited for the guard's whistle. They waited, and waited, and waited, and waited. But the guard's whistle never came, nor green flag. Edward's crew examined the brake coach to find he wasn't there. What is our guard? Edward asked himself anxiously. Edward's driver, Marshal Davis, went to ask the station master.
Have you seen our guard?
Haven't, he replied. The clock hit 10:05. Edward's fireman, Sidney Heaver, asked the porter. Have you seen the guard?
Yeah, last night. At the pub. Me and him were...
That's enough, lad, Sidney said, needing no farther information. Edward began to become cross. The clock hit 10:07. What is that guard? Just then, a silent whistle could be heard through the valley. It grew louder and louder. Everyone looked around, trying to figure out where it was coming from. Look, a little boy cried. Up there! And there he was, running far in the distance down the hill, sandwich in one hand, flag in another, and a whistle hanging from his mouth blowing endlessly, out of breath. He ran down the embankment, onto the platform, and into the brake coach. He popped out the door again, blew his whistle once more, and waved his green flag. Edward set off. The sun had short time to spare, but it stayed with Edward the entire time. He had quite a wonderful time. Children came running to the railway line. He met old friends and new friends at every station he stopped at. He finally came to a stop at Wellworth, the station most center of the island. By now, the sky grew dark once more and Mr. Blue Sky had gone away. He carefully shunted his coaches into a siding and began to shunt the yards. Edward liked shunting. It was fun to play with the grumpy trucks. He would come quietly from behind them and give them a push. Ooh, ooh, ooh. They screamed as they clattered over these soggy points. Whatever is happening? He would then stop as the silly trucks went on, bumping into each other once more until stopping in the correct siding. Edward pushed and pulled until they were all sorted nicely into the sidings. He went to rest in a siding. Presently, a low-toned poop entered the station yard. Edward peered to the main line to see Gordon coming through, but he wasn't pulling the express. Instead, he was pulling a long line of muddy trucks and vans.
Stupid fatot, he murmured. Fat director, indeed. A goods train, a goods train, a goods train, he mourned. The shame of it, oh, the shame of it.
He had suddenly seen Edward watching. Seeing that he was laughing, Gordon disappeared into a cloud of smoke and slowly away from the station, carrying over the branch line points and began to climb the hill. Edward laughed, then continued to rest. Shortly in time, Edward heard the sound of fast-paced footsteps approaching. He fluttered his eyes open to see the station master walking to his cab. His driver jumped out and began to talk to the manager. Too hard to overhear the conversation over the sleet of the rain, he waited. Of course, soon enough, the yard manager left them and waved goodbye to Marshall, holding a clipboard over his head. Edward glanced at Marshall, who began to walk toward him. Marshall was laughing, although it was hard to tell if it was laughing with tears in his eyes or the rain had deluged his face.
Gordon's got stuck on the hill, he said. They need us to help.
Edward let out a slight chuckle as warmth spread through his boiler once more as he hurriedly set off. On the main line to the middle east of the island is a hill. The hill is steep on one side. The engines always loved climbing up the gradient. It was difficult. Gordon just so happened to get stuck here, stopping in the middle of the line within the rain. Gordon's driver, Charlie Sand, was arguing with him.
Gordon, what in the name of Godred are you doing?
I'm stuck, is it not obvious?
Replied Gordon.
Stuck? Stuck? What do you mean stuck?
I'm stuck. These noisy trucks hold an engine back. Now you see if these were sensible coaches.
Oh my God, you're Gordon. I don't care. This should be as easy with or without coaches.
But the rain, Charlie.
I don't care about the rain, Gordon. You're finishing this run and that's final. Suddenly, a familiar whistle could be heard. Charlie walked down to the back of the train to find Edward and Marshall. Gordon's refusing to move. You'll have to help push, advised Charlie.
All right, we'll bring Edward to the bottom then,
replied Marshall. Soon enough, Gordon and Edward were brought to the bottom of the hill, ready for the next shot. Gordon was mumbling to himself.
Stupid trucks. Now if these were coaches, nice sensible things, they would come quietly.
Oh, would you shut it already? Conjectured Charlie. We're ready when you are, he called back to Edward.
No, you said all.
All right, cried Edward from the back, and with a wheeze of steam and a peep-peep, the cavalcade set off. Gordon moaned and groaned. He even shouted at times as large clouds of steam blew from his piston. He's trying to waste steam, said Charlie as he fiddled with the levers as a loud puff came from Gordon's cylinders as his wheels quickly drew action.
I can't do it,
moaned the grand engine. Edward, partially reasoning, cried out, I can do it. Gordon followed suit once more.
I can't do it.
I can do it.
I can't do it.
I can do it.
We can't do it.
We will do it, bellowed Edward, as suddenly it became easier. Gordon had suddenly begun to run on flat track as sand poured under his wheels. Quickly putting down his brakes, he slipped down the other side. He had done it. The train glided down the hill, passing through the next station and onwards.
I did it! I did it! I did it!
He cried. Edward came to the stop at the top of the hill, watching Gordon glide down. Not even a thank you, he murmured breathlessly. Slowly, he made his way to the next station. He took a nice long drink and a much-deserved rest.
You did a good job there, boy, said his driver. I'll tell you what, tomorrow I'll get out my paint and give you a nice, new, lovely coat of blue paint and red stripes. And you'll be the smartest engine in the shed.